We have had an incredible holiday. We've been away for a month from Cape Town. We're very blessed to have family all over the country that was happy to host us, and so we've done just an incredible trip enjoying the beauty of the garden route and the Eastern Cape. We've been on a farm in the Eastern Cape. We've been camping next to the Breda River. It's just been a really great time. And we left George, the beautiful lush green George with the beautiful oceans and driving just in this incredible greenery. And we drove into Milnerton and we were like, why do we live here? Like, what? But honestly, don't worry, it gets better. Just sitting in worship today, and we're not in our home yet. We rent our house out to make our holiday possible, and we still have a couple days, so we're only moving back into our house tomorrow. But being here this morning and being in worship, I was so overwhelmed. I was like, I'm home. Like, this is why we live here. We live here because of you guys, because of this church, because of what God has for us here. And honestly, I feel like this morning I was like, okay, I'm home. So I just want to say we love you guys, and we've really, really missed just being here together, worshiping. We did go visit another church while we were on holiday, but there's just nothing like Legacy Church. There's nothing like Legacy Church worship, and just being here and worshiping just makes my heart so happy. So welcome back to our first gathering of the year. We are really grateful to be here with all of you. Okay, so while we were on holiday, I should start my clock. While we were away on holiday, we camped with some friends at the Breda River. Our campsite was right on the river, so we could sit and just watch the kids swimming in the river. And we were trying to get Kai, my son, to practice his swimming because he has to do his time for his NIPPERS exam this week to qualify. So we were like, you need to keep that fitness level up. And so I was watching him the one day, watching him swim, and he was trying to swim up the river. But as he was swimming, he put his head down and he's doing his strokes, and as he's swimming, I just see him go slightly off and slightly off and slightly off, and eventually he's swimming towards the riverbank, and he's just going for it, and he's going in the wrong direction. And eventually, when he comes up to get a breath and to get some air, he looks around and he's like, why am I here? Because I was going that direction, but I'm ended up here. And then he could readjust and head back in the right direction up the river. And I thought, isn't that kind of like our lives? Right? We start off the year, and we've got all these great New Year's resolutions or New Year's good intentions, and we want to do this, and we want to go in that direction, and we're excited, new leaf, new year, new start, and we're ready to go. But then the year starts. And it doesn't stop for anyone. And it just goes, and it comes with whatever's life's going to throw at us this year. And we put our heads down, and we just go for it. And we're consumed by the schedules and sorting kids out and homework and friendships and studies or work and everything that involves, our social life, our social media life. And life just gets busy. And before we know it, we could actually be slowly but surely veering off in a different direction to what we actually want to go. And we might get to the end of the year and suddenly there's Christmas decorations in the shops again, and we're like, where did the year go? And then we take a breath, we come up for air, and we're like, what am I doing here? I wanted to be there. I wanted to go in that direction this year. I wanted to become more like this year. But somehow, I've been swimming into the riverbank. And so we want to start the year off with a series called Intentional. Choosing to live on purpose. Choosing to live on purpose. If we want to live a life that leaves a legacy, if we want to live a life that matters, a life that's going to influence and affect other people for the better, a life that's lived for the sake of others, then we have to be intentional. There's certain choices we need to make intentionally in order to end up where we want to go. Because otherwise we're going to end up where we don't want to be. Craig Rochelle says, life is the sum of the decisions we make. Life is the sum of the decisions we make. Every day, we're making apparently around 350,000 decisions. We're making decisions constantly from the time we wake up, whether we're going to press snooze or whether we're going to actually get up, how are we going to start our day? Are we going to reach for our phone and start scrolling, or are we going to start the day in God's word? Then when we get to work or we get to school, we're choosing how we're going to respond to people. We're choosing how much effort we're going to put in. We're choosing what tasks we're going to do and what tasks we're going to leave. When we get home, we're choosing how to respond. We're choosing what to wear. We're choosing what to do with our time. Constantly, all day long, we're making choices. And those choices add up to our lives. James Clear says it this way: every decision you make is a vote towards who you will become. Every decision you make is a vote towards who you will become. Our decisions matter. Our choices matter. Even those little choices every day that we make add up to our lives. And our choices depict the direction that our life is going to go in. And so if we're making whatever choices we're making, those are deciding where we're going to go. So your decisions determine your direction, and then your direction determines your destiny. So those choices become our lives. When Kai swims at the gym, that's where he usually practices, he doesn't have a problem with swimming into the side or going into the wall because he's got lanes. Because there's these guide ropes that are making sure that he stays in the lane that he needs to be so that he can just swim up and down, and he goes in the direction that he's meant to go in. And those guide ropes in our lives are our choices. Our choices are guiding us in a certain direction. So they're either taking us in the direction we want to go, or they're forming a new lane, and they're taking us in a different direction. What direction is your life heading in? What direction is your life heading in? Now, the good news is that we can change the choices we make at any point. If we take stock of our lives, like we come up for air and we realize, wait, I'm not where I want to be. Or maybe you're starting the year thinking, sure, I don't want to repeat of last year. I want to make different choices, or I want to go in a different direction. I want to do something different. I want to live a life that matters. I want to be a better mom, or I want to be a better friend. I want to be a great employer or employee. Whatever your goal or your vision is for this year, you can make different choices that can lead you to that goal. And you can start making new choices every day. No one sets out thinking, I'm going to get in debt. I'm just going to live a life that is just full of debt. Hey, no one sets out making that with that goal in mind, but choices, little choices here, little choices there, maybe some big choices, lead us to the financial situation we're in. No one gets married or plans their marriage planning to get divorced, but choices. Everyday choices. How am I going to spend time with my partner? Am I going to do this? How are we going to live our lives? What kind of choices are we making in our marriage? What am I prioritizing in my marriage? Every choice we make leads to the marriage we're going to have. The choices we make today determine the marriage we'll have in 20 years. Every choice, it's important that we make the right choices. No one decides that they're going to live an unhealthy life. They're like, I'm just going to be unhealthy. That's my future. No one decides that. But one day you wake up and you realize, I'm not the weight I want to be, or I don't have the energy that I need to be present with my kids, or you don't make those choices consciously, but you're making choices every day that accumulate towards the life that you live, and it becomes a lifestyle. So as you make choice after choice after choice, that becomes a lifestyle which then leads you in a certain direction. Every decision you make is a vote towards who you will become. Your decisions are determining the direction of your life. So we need to be intentional with our choices. So today, I want to look at how to make intentional, everyday choices that will lead towards a life of significance and purpose. How to make intentional, everyday choices that will lead to a life of significance and purpose. And the first point is pre-decide who you want to be. Pre-decide, in advance, decide who you want to be. So I want to look at the life of Daniel. It's found in the book of Daniel in the Bible. And what an incredible man. Just so intentional. He knew who he wanted to be. He knew who he was, who he wanted to be, and he made intentional choices to live the life that he wanted to live. He wanted to honor God with his life, and he made choices that showed those values. And so Daniel was a young man in the time when Babylon came and overtook Jerusalem, and he was taken captive and sent off to Babylon. Then King Nebuchadnezzar was the king in that time, and he wanted to take all the young men that were strong and healthy and wise and well-read. So he got his person in charge to choose the best of the best from like the royal families and the prominent families in that time, and he brought them all to the palace, and he said they must go through 3 years of training. So they basically were going to put them right into the culture of Babylon and teach them everything they needed to know of how to be a Babylonian, how to work in the palace. They were going to be trained for royal service. And so Daniel was one of those men that were trained for 3 years, and they were going to eat the king's food. They were going to kind of be totally immersed in that culture. And in Daniel 1 verse 8, we read Daniel's first response. So obviously they're getting told what's happening, and they're like, this is what you're going to eat, this is what you're going to do, and this is Daniel's first response. It says, but Daniel was determined not to defile himself by eating the food and wine given to them by the king. He asked the chief of staff for permission not to eat these unacceptable foods. So Daniel knew who he was. He was a Jew. And there were regulations for Jews on what they were allowed to eat, what they weren't allowed to eat, how they should live, because they wanted to keep themselves holy before God. And so Daniel doesn't wait to get to the table and see the lamb chops, little medium rare. He doesn't wait to see what's going to be offered. He is determined to live the life that he knows God wants him to live. And so he pre-decided who he wanted to be. And he made a plan before. No, this is who I am. This is how I live my life. This is who I want to be. And so he made choices based on that. And eventually they test them, and him and his friends eat only fruit and vegetables. And over time, they become the strongest and the wisest so I don't know, heads up to any vegetarians in the house. But I think God honored Daniel. He honored Daniel's heart to want to please him. And God actually, the Bible says God gave them amazing wisdom. He gave Daniel abilities to interpret dreams. He gave the friends great wisdom. And in the end, Daniel 1:18-20, it says, when the training period ordered by the king was completed, the chief of staff brought all the young men to King Nebuchadnezzar. The king talked with them, and no one impressed him as much as Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. You might know them as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So they entered the royal service. Whenever the king consulted them in any matter requiring wisdom and balanced judgment, he found them 10 times more capable than any of the magicians and enchanters in his entire kingdom. So he made choices that I believe God honored, and they ended up being the one that the people that the king called on the most. We need to pre-decide who we want to be. So what are your values? Who do you want to become? Have you sat down intentionally and thought, what are my values? What are the things that I want to matter to me, that are important? And do they line up with the values of the kingdom? To live intentionally, we must pre-decide who we want to be and what values we want to uphold. And then we need to take time. The distraction detox is a great opportunity where instead of watching series at night, or instead of being on social media, or instead of gaming till early hours of the morning, or however you're spending your time, you're giving that up and saying, no, I'm going to take this time to intentionally think about what my values are, to think about who do I want to become. And it may be, and we all have values, we all have things that we value, and are those the right things? Because if we look at the choices we make, those will show you what your values are. So if you look at what kind of choices am I making with my family, it'll show you what you value. What kind of choices am I making with my time? It'll show you what you value. So we need to assess, are those values what we want, and do they align with the Word of God? Write those values down. Then we'll make decisions based on our predetermined values and not on emotional responses to things. Psalm 119, verse 30 says, I have chosen to be faithful. I have determined to live by your regulations. We have to choose in advance who we want to be and how we want to live. As Christians, the person we should want to be is to be like Jesus. That should be our goal. I want to be more like Jesus. And then our decisions should be shaped around that goal, around the values that Jesus teaches us. And because we face so many decisions every day, apparently around 350,000, you kind of need to simplify those decisions, right? Because if you're thinking through every decision, your life is like you're going to get decision fatigue. It's going to be overwhelming. But when we make decisions based on our values, it simplifies that process. Because instead, all we need to ask is this going to help me become more like Jesus? Does this align with God's will and God's values? If not, don't do it. If yes, go for it. Okay, Deuteronomy 30, verse 19 to 20. This is Moses. It's his final speech to the Israelites and encouragement to them. And he goes through the whole law and he's telling them again, reminding them it's the new generation of Israelites that are going to enter the promised land. And in verse 19, he says, today I have given you the choice between life and death, between blessings and curses. Now I call on heaven and earth to witness the choice you make. Oh, that you would choose life, so that you and your descendants might live. You can make this choice by loving the Lord your God, obeying him, and committing yourself firmly to him. He's saying, here, this is how God wants you to live. Now I'm giving you a choice. You can choose this and choose life, or you can choose death. But choose life. And so every day we're faced with opportunities to choose life. But we have an enemy that wants us to choose death. And so there are going to be temptations. There are going to be opportunities to choose death, loads of them. And they're going to look so innocent. And they're going to look so easy. Or they're going to, but I deserve this. Or you get to choose your life. You make your own truth. But there's two choices. There's life or there's death. And we get to intentionally choose life every day. And that will lead us down a path where we get to live an incredible life with God, a life of purpose and significance. So some of our family values, which help shape our decisions, I'll give you just a few just to give you some ideas. The first is Jesus and his church. Jesus and his church are the most important thing to us and our family. When Reese and I got married, we decided this is who we want to be. We want to follow God. We want to value our relationship with him, and we want to value his church. And so that has always shaped our decisions. And so even a silly thing like when our kids get invited to a party on a Sunday morning, they'll look at the time, they'll be like, okay, we can't go. Because they know it's not an option. We don't do birthday parties on Sunday mornings. We do church. That's what we do as a family. And you might think that's quite intense, like it's just a party and it's one Sunday, but every decision accumulates into a lifestyle. And so you allow one party, then the next party Kai's like, but Riley got to go, why don't I get to go? Then Luca's like, well, they got to go, why don't I? And suddenly you've missed church for a month. And now you're surrounded by other influences in your life, and you're making decisions that are just slowly drifting you towards the riverbank. But we want to make sure that our choices, we want our children to grow up in church. We want our children to love Jesus because we know that that is the best thing for them. And so we make intentional choices about guarding our Sunday mornings because we want to be in the house of God and we want our children to grow up in the house of God. And we don't want to drift slowly but surely away from the life that we are intentionally choosing to live. Another value of ours is family. We value family. We value our relationships. We value family time. And so we make choices to go away on holiday together. We make choices to limit screen time. Our kids are not allowed to, don't be too horrified, our kids are not allowed to watch or have screen time on a Saturday at all because we want them to play together. Their lives are so busy in the week, we want them to enjoy each other. It's a value of ours. And we want to be present with our kids, so we rather play games or we go walking in the forest together or we do fun things together instead of sitting behind a screen. It was also, it made the value of family, made it easy for us when Kai wanted to join a soccer club. We were like, okay, that sounds cool, it's in the week. But then they said, oh no, all the matches were on Saturdays. And straight away, Reese and I were like, no, that's our Sabbath, that's our family time. Like we don't want you going away for matches every Saturday. This is who we want to be. We've decided who we want to be. We want to be a family that love each other, a family that values family. And so you can do the soccer in the week, but you can't do the matches. And it was easy. Well, I mean, it was tough to try and convince him that that was okay. But it was easy for us to be able to say, no, as hard as this is who we want to be, and we're going to make decisions based on that. The same with another thing we value is health, so we make choices around that. We value rest, so we say no to a lot of things. When Riley wanted to add another extramural to the busy time already, we were like, no, like we value rest. We value having capacity for people, having capacity for each other. We're not going to just add another thing to our schedule. We value our marriage. I want to have a great marriage in 20 years' time, so I'm putting choices in place now, things in place now. And I mean, last year, or the end of the year before, I realized that Reese and I weren't praying together anymore. We weren't having the same kind of connection that we were before because we were just watching series every night, or I was. And so I felt challenged, and I said, okay, I'm going to give up series for the year. And I gave up series for the entire year. I still haven't watched anything. Wait till Monday. No, I'm joking. Because we wanted to have more capacity for each other. We wanted to pray together more. We wanted to go to bed together instead of like staring at a screen until the one falls asleep and then rolling over and going to sleep. So we're making choices based on who we want to be and what kind of marriage we want, what kind of family we want, what kind of people we want to be. Community and people are another value. We value community, we value people. And so when we got given some money, it was easy to know what we needed to do with that. We renovated our outside area so that we could create a space where we could have more people to come over and to host people well, where they weren't sitting on broken chairs and sand under their feet. So we could prioritize our money around our values and around what was important to us. So we need to pre-decide who we want to be. We don't wait till we're alone late at night with our boyfriend or girlfriend to decide, do I want to honor God in my relationship? Because I can tell you what's going to happen, right? We decide in advance how we're going to respond, what we're going to do with our relationship. Because our emotions overrule our logic. So if we wait till we're in the moment If we wait till we're in front of that piece of chocolate cake and be like, let me decide, do I want to be healthy? What are we going to do? We're going to eat the chocolate cake. Okay, we pre-decide, I want to be healthy. I'm not going to put myself in that situation. Okay, then our emotions don't get a vote. When our values are clear, if our values are clear, our emotions won't get a vote. So I want to encourage you to take time over the next couple of weeks to set time, even today, go home, set some time in your calendar. Put it down. These are the times that I'm going to sit to think about what I value, to think about who I want to become. If you're married, I would highly suggest you do that together. Put time, organize a date night, go out together, talk about it, start that conversation. If you're single, get a friend or 2 or 3 friends together and sit down together and look at, okay, who do we want to be? Help me see what are my values. And you can ask your friends, what do you think I value? What is my life showing you that I value? Because they'll be able to see it. Sometimes we can't see the things we value. Sometimes we think we value certain things, but our actions are actually saying something different. And trusted friends or family can help you see, actually, you say you value that, but you never put time aside for it. You say, this is important to you, but I never see you prioritizing that. So you can work out what it is that you value. Okay, the second point is put practices into place. So pre-decide who you want to be, and then put practices into place. If we look at Daniel, again, later on in chapter 6, there's a new king now, King Darius, and Darius decides he wants to divide his kingdom into like 120 kind of states, and he puts rulers over each of those, and then he chooses a couple of guys to oversee all of those chiefs. And one of those guys is Daniel. And Daniel impresses the king more than anyone else. He's blown away by how faithful he is, how well he manages, his wisdom. And so he makes plans to put him in charge of everyone, over everyone, so that he'll be like second in charge of the whole nation that, by the way, he's a captive in. So see what God has done? Like, wow, like Daniel's faithfulness has led him to the place that he's in. But obviously the other officials are not too impressed with this. And they're like, we need to get Daniel out. The king loves him. He's going to take over. We need to get him out. And so they try and find something to accuse him of. And I love, I'm like this. I hope people can say this one day of me. Not at the moment, but we're becoming more like Jesus every day. Daniel 6 verse 4 says, then the other administrators and high officers began searching for some fault in the way Daniel was handling government affairs, but they couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. He was faithful, always responsible, completely trustworthy. They couldn't find anything. And so then they realize, okay, we're going to have to find another way to get him out. And so they go to the king and they make the king sign a law that says that everyone can only worship the king. They can't worship anyone else, or they get killed. And so the king, being like, that sounds amazing, people should worship me, he signs this law that says you have to worship him and no one else. And of course they knew that Daniel would not adhere to that. And so Daniel 6 verse 10, but when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, he went home and knelt, as usual, in his upstairs room, with its windows open towards Jerusalem. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he had always done, giving thanks to his God. Daniel is faced with a dilemma, right? He's like, if I worship God, I'm going to be killed. If I don't worship God, I lose my salvation, and I don't want to do that. I want to worship God. He knew that God's law says you don't worship anyone but him. And so he doesn't suddenly have to pray and be like, God, what do I do? He goes and does the same thing he always does. He worships God. He carries on because it's become a practice. It's a lifestyle for him. He's got practices in place, and he knows that this is who I want to be, and this is what I do to help me be that person. And so, long story short, The king is forced to throw him into the lion's den. God protects him in the lion's den. He closes the mouth of the lions. He comes out unharmed. And then this is the response of the king in Daniel 6:26-28. I decree that everyone throughout my kingdom should tremble with fear before the God of Daniel. For he is the living God, and he will endure forever. His kingdom will never be destroyed, and his rule will never end. He rescues and saves his people. He performs miraculous signs and wonders in the heavens and on earth. He has rescued Daniel from the power of the lions. So Daniel prospered during the reign of Darius and the reign of Cyrus the Persian. Wow, like what a life. Daniel causes an entire nation to know who God is. He shows a foreign nation that doesn't know God, he shows them the power, God's power. God uses him to turn hearts towards him, for people to come to know him, to make God famous. Isn't that what we're called to do with our lives? That we should use our lives to make God famous? Have you noticed that your good decisions compound in the right direction? So when you make a good choice, maybe it's a healthy eating choice, tomorrow you feel like you want to make another good choice, right? And then another good choice. And maybe you're like, sure, I'm starting to feel good. Maybe I should go for a run. And suddenly it compounds. And your good choices are leading you towards a practice. And it's becoming something that you do regularly. And then it becomes a lifestyle. But the same is true with bad decisions. Bad decisions compound in the wrong direction. So when you binge eat at home, the next day, it's almost like you've given yourself permission to do the same, or to go and make another unhealthy choice and another unhealthy choice. And slowly, you're actually ending up making that a lifestyle, and that becomes your practice. Now, you go home, on your way home every day, you stop at the shop and you buy a chocolate, and that's become a lifestyle. It's become a practice because your decisions compound. And so if we want our lives to go in the right direction, we need to make those choices, the good choices that can slowly compound in the right direction so that it can take us to the place that we want to be. And that's where we need to put practices in place. For our family, we don't decide if we're going to Sabbath on a Saturday. We don't decide, okay, what are we going to do this Saturday? It's a practice. It's what we do. We Sabbath together on a Saturday. It's part of our lifestyle. If we want to become more like Jesus, if that's our goal, we're saying we need to become more like Jesus. That's the person. We've pre-decided who we want to be. Then we need to have a practice of reading our Bible. We can't say that we want to be more like Jesus, but we never read his word. We never look at what he's got to say. We never find out more about who he is. How can you become like somebody that you don't know? How can you become more like somebody that you're not intentionally being with on a daily basis? If we have these goals and these visions and we've decided our values, then we need to start putting those things into practice. We need to put practices into place in our lives. Because our practices will establish our values so that they become a lifestyle. So some of our family values that align with some of our family practices that align with our values. I'll just give you some examples just to help you start thinking. The first is Sunday church services. That's a practice. Our family will be here on a Sunday. Sabbath on Saturdays. It's a practice that we do. Exercise routines. I run on a Monday and a Wednesday. A Monday and a Friday and a Wednesday, do a Pilates class. That's a practice. And there will be weeks that maybe I don't get to that, but because it's a practice, the next week comes and it's back to that same routine and back to that same routine. And I've been doing that for, I don't know how many years, many, many, many years, because it's a practice. So if I just went when I felt like it, I wouldn't become the person I want to be. I want our family to be healthy. One of my goals in life is that I want to be able to play with my grandkids one day. Like, I want to be able to be on the floor and play with my little grandkids. But I need to make choices today that will lead me to be that person in however many years' time. Life group is a practice for us. We go to life group on a Tuesday every week during life group season. We holiday twice a year with our family. We go camping. If we can't afford anything else, we make a plan, or we go to friends' houses, but we want to go on holiday together because our value is family, and so we have a practice of going away twice a year together as a family. Reese and I go away every year for 2 nights by ourselves. That's a practice because we value our marriage. Our marriage is a value to us, and so we, every single year, mostly on our anniversary, we'll go away for 2 nights, just the 2 of us, just to spend some time together. I listened to a sermon many, many years ago, probably about like 18 to 20 years ago now, by Bill Hybels, and it has stuck with me for the past 20 years. And he was talking about your schedule and your calendar, and how when you sit down to do your calendar, you don't ask, what do I need to do? You ask, who do I want to become? And that's always stuck with me, because I was like, that is so true. When you sit down to plan your weekly schedule, your monthly schedule, your yearly schedule, you're actually planning who you're going to become. You're putting down the things that